work that with all of the work that we'll do together. So I was just going to remind people that we will record. So that means that people can hear and see what we say and do in the future. So just keep that in mind. Just keep on task, on topic within our professional capacities, and we'll all be fine. So thank you, Michael, for getting that started. So ideally, it just said got it. It's very Australian, isn't it? Got it, get it. So we're ready to go. So welcome to today's session. It's a one-off session. It's like a precursor to a program we're running, for which I think some of you are already enrolled into. So we've got 2 programs running next week, building off of this. This is a standalone, so if you do this only, it's fine, but you may be interested in some of these other programs, which we'll share later in the session, that have a more focused approach. And what we've designed this for is the kind of the underpinning or the foundation type information you need to think about when you're designing learning resources. So we'll unpack that and build upon some of your experience. So welcome, Charmaine. Are you able to hear us? I know you've been in and out. I don't know if I can see your microphone's on and I can hear you. Do you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Sorry about that. I had a few technical issues this morning. So my name's Charmaine and I come from country or regional Victoria in Donald.
Fantastic. So yes, let's hope that's it, Charmaine. You've had your technical issues for the day, but they can go away now. You can just enjoy the session. So welcome, Charmaine and everybody, to the session. As I said, we will try to use most of the capacity of the Zoom area. So this is just a mock-up of Zoom. It might not look quite like that on your screen, but gives you a bit of an idea. So if you haven't already done so, please get that annotate tool out. We'll make use of that through the session. In terms of how we operate together as a group, we will ask, if you're not talking in the main room, if you don't mind just muting your mic. A couple of reasons. One is that we don't get any crazy background noises or any super secrets if anybody says something we shouldn't be able to hear. The other is if you do want to talk, if you just unmute, we know then that you're somebody that wants to contribute to one of the conversations. So we'll just do that. So just go down the bottom. If you want to unmute, just go down the bottom. If you can't see, you can see mine because that's just a picture, but if you can't see yours, go right down the bottom. And when you get there, it should pop up. So that's where your mute is. In terms of video cameras, it's really up to you. I can see a number of you have got them on, which is fantastic, but it's sometimes a bandwidth issue or it's got a privacy issue. So if you want to have your video on, great. If you don't, fantastic. Either works for us. We will do a breakout room session. If you can turn your video on, it would work better in a small group situation. And then in the breakout room, you can have your microphone on all the time. You don't have to worry because there's only small groups there. And so we've got some people, if you're finding that you want to get rid of your stars, so you've been using our stamps and you're like, hang on, how do I use my screen now? Because now all I've got is stars or stamps. Go back to your annotate tool and click on the mouse. All right, so you have to go back to the annotate tool, click on the mouse, and that's how you get the features back again. So I can be able to quickly clear those. I'll do one more thing and then I'll just call for who's got any questions. The last thing we've got is the chat, and we will use that as well. And you can see it's already being used quite well. So please, if you haven't already done so, go down the bottom of the screen and click on the chat. It will pop up. It might sit over the PowerPoint slides or sit over the screen. If that's the case, then just put your cursor on top of the Zoom screen and press escape, and it should lock the chat into the right-hand side. And as I said, we'll use that in a moment and get used to that. But don't wait for us to tell you to use the chat. If you're on task and on topic and you want to share something and you've got a question, use the chat. The chat's everybody's space. You don't have to wait for us to direct that. So Michael, I might hand across to you.
All right, well, thanks, Alison, and welcome everybody. Probably should tell us about the people who you've put your trust in coming to this session today. My name's Michael Gwyther. I've had a couple of kind of two parts to my work life, I guess. The first 15, 20 years I worked in the community. I managed a neighbourhood house in Ballarat here for 15 years and started off pretty small, mainly programs aimed at women with kids, and eventually evolved into kind of a literacy, numeracy, IT, family camps, cooking extravaganza toward the end as kind of opportunities rose. Then after I left that, I kind of got involved in PD at that level. A lot of PD around digital literacy, which is kind of what I got involved with fairly early on, with another guy from the sector, and created my own RTO with my partner, and we had that for about 10 years and delivered a range of training, and now tend to just do PD webinars, but also write courses for blended delivery, mainly in the vet sector and occasionally higher ed.
Thank you. And then just a quick background of mine. I've been in the vet sector. This will be my 21st year in the vet sector. So that's where my background lies. Mostly I taught in business services for a long time, and I get to do a bit of TAE work now. But I also, with Michael, we get to run some of the professional development for some of the Victorian institutes for which we work closely with their foundation colleges that work a lot with refugees or immigrants, and do a lot of this kind of pre-accredited or pre-level 1 or level 1 type training. So we've had lots of experience in there, and so I can bring some of that experience through today. And like Michael, I get to do some of the designing and creating of learning resources and whole courses, etc. As well. One thing I didn't do before, sorry, Michael, I jumped to you so quickly, is I didn't ask if there was any questions, if anybody's got any questions about using Zoom or how we use Zoom. So please just unmute if you've got any. And if you do have any at any stage, please ask us. So again, Michael, do you want to take over from here?
Yeah, sure. So now we've heard from us, and it's can I have the next slide, please, Alison? We're going to find out a little bit about you, but I'm just looking at the video there and realizing that I think I understand why you're using that exercise bike there. Jen, you've got a whole stack of chocolates in the background there, so I'm just thinking that the handful of chocolates, half an hour on the bike, you're kind of balancing things out. That's how it goes. Good stuff. Hey, so we're going to ask you to use the chat now. Melson's talked a bit about the chat. This chat's a great way of being able to communicate in Zoom. And we tend to give people a bit of time here when they do this. I want to find out a little bit about you. If we went around the room and took the mic, we'd probably be here for quite a while. So we're going to do this quite quickly. To find the chat and type in there a little bit about yourself, like where you're working, what kind of pre-accredited courses you're involved with in either facilitating, or we've had quite a few people who are coordinating. And then one amazing thing about you that probably not related to learning, but could be, that is unique to you. So we'll give you 2 minutes. We don't have a timer here, but I'll let you know when there's a minute to go. So you can take your time and share as much as you wish. Just sing out if you can't find the chat, but it's at the bottom of the screen. You'll see an actual chat icon there. And when you select that, the chat box will come up. And of course, when you finish, just press enter. Got about a minute left. All right. Thank you. Now, if you want to have a look at what people have written, you can use your resize on the chat to make it bigger or smaller or wider as well. And you can scroll back through each of those messages that have been there. So we've got Rob from Diverse Fat Training in Geelong, who's got the annotations going with the app. Yeah, sometimes they don't work on particular browsers. So it could be a version issue, I'm not quite sure. And Vanessa, who is at Multicultural Services in Bendigo, working in food processing. Walked across Spain, which is pretty impressive. I've got another friend who used to work in Learn Local called Lynn Gibb, who some of you may know, who I think it's the Camilo work she did. I'm not sure if that's the one you did, Vanessa, or something else, but it sounded pretty amazing. And Julie, working with Karen, previously early childhood services, and lots in between. Wow, one of 13 children. Oh my God. That's pretty amazing. I thought my partner had a fair few kids. She's got 7, I think, in her family. And Simon, Duke Street. I've been to Duke Street a couple of times. Had a mate used to teach there, and it's very close to a souvlaki pity factory, which is always good to drop into. Can find a funny side in most things, which is good to hear. Otherwise, it'd be probably crying. Jane, hello to you, teaching a range of cooking and gardening and zero waste programs in ACFI, and it's pretty interesting to find the sort of free foods movement that's really taken off in neighbourhoods too, which interesting. And food safety. And Charmaine, she's in Donald. I've been to Donald a couple of times as well. I used to know Soapy Valance. That was quite a while ago. But went up there and worked with him when there was a couple of outreach programs in ACFI then around connecting providers to the internet. And you're a patient person, so we're going to have to look to you, I think, and your video image to take some zen, take some calm if things get a bit stressed. And Gay, you're in Rist, which is out the back of Hamilton. I think I visited that place as well too. Yeah, big agricultural place out in the middle of quite a big agricultural area. Welcome to you. Rob's teaching English and got a TAFE partnership happening, which is fantastic. And Erica is working at Syria in Melbourne's East. Yeah, it's interesting pre-accredited projects, teaching smart money and everyday learning skills with mild and intellectual learning disabilities. A magnificent cohort, really, that. I mean, I kind of got involved in digital literacy because of that cohort and internet education way back when. Fantastic group. So you've been appointed the pre-accredited coordinator there. You're on the committee at 3 local community groups. Yeah, it sounds like you're very, very busy. Great. Well, we've got a really diverse and pretty experienced kind of group. So I'm really looking forward to learning from each of you. I'll hand it back to Alison to introduce today's program for you. Thanks, everyone.
So yeah, it's lovely learning about each and every one of you and how diverse the group is and how diverse the sector is in terms of adult community education and Learn Locals. And I had quite a few chuckles as I read through some of your what makes you unique or an amazing thing about you. So thank you. You've brightened up my day already. It's only early. So look, we're going to spend some time. As I said, it's that foundation, that underpinning stuff that we need to think about when we're designing learning in general. But and then that learning in general then helps to direct what we'll do for our learning resources, what will support that particular learning. So we'll have a good conversation about the adult learning principles, some examples of good practice around adult learning principles, but also around how they apply to learning resources. And then we'll look at some of these learning resources, and then we'll ask you to think about what kind of learning resources would you be interested in developing? And we might be able to give you some guidance on where to get started with some of those things. And then the next stage, if you're interested in doing any more, would be part of the next program, which is the beginner's course on designing and developing literacy and numeracy resources. There's one 3-webinar program, and the other one is designing and developing employment skill learning resources. Again, that's a 3-week program, but a 3-webinar program as well. And so, yeah, at the end, we always like to know, hopefully you've got something from these sessions, and what might you do as a result of being part of today's session as well. So Mark, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, thanks. Well, we're going to start with a bit of a brainstorm about the adult learning principles. We talk about these things a lot, but we want to find out what you know about them. So we're going to ask you to use the annotations tool, and there's a text tool there that you're able to select and then type straight into the whiteboard. And you can type as many times as you want. And so the question is, what are the adult learning principles? What do you know about them? How do they, what's your kind of understanding of those principles that probably use in your everyday teaching, learning, communication with your learners? I'll give you a moment to find that. I'll type something on the board. There we go. Someone's found it. And if you can't find it and it's causing any stress, just chuck it in the chat. This is fine, but this looks good. Oh, I've got a couple there already, which is great. So imbalance. They learn best from something they know. Yeah, scaffolding from the known to the unknown is always a great learning tool for all of us. Outcomes are important. And yesterday we had a strong discussion about the importance of social learning, and they had a hidden curriculum, I guess, in a lot of what Learn Local does in terms of providing a basis for socialisation for learners. That adults usually, and there's a qualification there with an exclamation point, intrinsically motivated to learn. And in relation to relevance, that knowing that information that they're learning and probably connected to those outcomes are relevant to where they're going and what they need. And life experience is another one. How life experience, it probably relates a little bit to learn best from something they know, that all our life experience contributes to not only our learning, but probably what we want to learn and what makes us curious. That whole sense of wonder about learning that's often missing from many of our participants, at least initially as well. That's pretty great list. Co-design, that's interesting. Co-design, do you want to talk a little bit about what you mean by that? That sounds really quite interesting. Whoever put that up, feel free to open up the mic and tell us a bit about that co-design comment.
That was me. I certainly know that in my classes, if I come with the sort of designed set of ideas for class, that they are going to resist that because they do not like being treated like children. So very much we co-design what we are going to teach. I do a lot of work with them around sort of where their knowledge is and where they want it to go and what they're interested in learning and why, and build resources around that. so that it's not just they're coming to a preset course, it's very much a course built around their learning needs, and they have input and ownership over that.
That sounds fascinating. And so what are the kind of challenges you have to overcome to make that work to get them to participate, Erica?
Look, to be honest, I think that they're more likely to participate in that because, my students, as I said, they sort of have mild intellectual and learning disabilities, and they often have come across people making decisions for them. And part of what this course is around building those independent skills. They do not like being treated like children, and they are not children. And so really giving them that ownership to say, you know, what are the things that you want to learn and that you don't understand, and saying, okay, we're going to do that. Then you're sort of partners in learning, as opposed to, a trainer who holds all the knowledge and, students who are receiving that knowledge. It's very much about kind of going hand in hand. And they feel, I would say, when we plan out a term or even in a given session, if I say, hey, I was thinking of doing this, we might go off on a different tangent and not do what I thought we were going to do that day. And that's perfectly fine because they feel ownership over that learning and over the teaching as well.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that, Erica. Now I'd like the person who said adults are brackets, usually, ! Motivated to learn, to talk a bit about that and maybe what that qualification might mean for them in terms of the adult learning principles.
Sorry, that was me again, actually.
Oh, that's okay.
I just mean that I mean, my learners are sort of at different levels in their learning journey. I think, some adult learners, they come and they really have a clear outcome, and some are really there because they don't know what they don't know. So some of my learners are really keen to just like get on it, and some it's sort of like pulling teeth. But I think that that also has to do with the cohort that I'm teaching. I think if I was teaching a different kind of cohort, that might not apply. So I would say adults are intrinsically motivated to learn, usually, except for some of my students.
Great, thank you. And adults learn best from something they know. Can we, person who posted that, talk a little bit to that point?
That was me, Gay. Yes, I think it sort of relates to the other comment here that's got to be relevant. So if we can scaffold off what they already know, even if it's not right to the point that we want to get to, start there and then sort of work towards where we want them to go. They seem to have a lot of my learners are confidence difficulties. They don't seem confident in doing anything. And then if you sort of go back to where they are confident, it's easier to sort of expand out of there, I find.
Yeah, it's a kind of recognition that learning doesn't take place in a vacuum, and for all of us, we like small wins, don't we? That kind of eventually cascades to something much bigger.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kay. Look, I'm going to have over to Alison now to talk a little bit more about the adult learning principles, but thanks for that. That's a really fantastic list.
Absolutely. So again, what we've recognised is that you guys have come in, I always call it the glass half full. So people come in with something, and so you guys have got some knowledge. So I always go, well, let's find out what you know, and let's just fill up the other bit that we don't know. So I'll grab these drawings, I'll save them, and I'll put them on the slides, and then we'll share the slides. So you'll have a set of these when we go, in a short period after the session. Also note on that annotate tool, down the right-hand side, there's that save button. So if there's anything that you see and you think, oh gosh, I'd like that, but like, I want that and I want that now, then you can just hit the save button. And it will say show in folder, so it will show you where it saves on your computer, and you can capture as many photos and images as you like. It should just grab the screen. It shouldn't grab everybody's images and so on, but no, it does. I shouldn't talk. I'm always the presenter. And when I do it, it only grabs my screen, so I'm assuming it does the same with yours. And so we shouldn't have heads and faces on there as well. All right, so thank you so much. I'm just going to double check I did that. Yep, I did get that one, and save that. So we're back into the annotate. All right, so this annotate, don't put it away anywhere. And just have a little look at the stamp. So in the stamp, there's 3 different stamps. Okay, so we're going to I want you to look down this list and go, yep, that's me. This is how I operate as a learner. So a green tick if that's you. If you go, nah, that's not me, then let's use the little cross. And if you're like, I'm still out on it, I'm still not really sure at this stage, then give us a little question mark. And so you'll see, I think nearly all of those, yeah, practical hands-on, yeah, we're respected, yep. So you guys got them all, right? So we don't have to fill you too much on there. Beautiful. So thank you for that person. That's good. We'll be able to grab that as well. So that'll come up on the screen on this slide as well. Remember, at any point, if you've got any issues, it looks like somebody on their mobile phone. If you're on a mobile phone, let me know, because that makes a difference in how we might give instructions. So if that person's a mobile phone, if you're just using the drawer, then continue to use the drawer. But I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points there around they're usually intrinsically motivated. And I talk about learners who are encouraged to come to our training. So there's others who see it, know it, and know that this is important to them, and they are the ones who are intrinsically motivated because they've personally made a choice, or somebody's helped them, guide them in a direction where they know it will help with their learning or career or personal or social goals. And others are encouraged either by an external motivator, which is the government funding that they may have, or a parent or a partner or a carer or somebody who's saying, look, we know this is really good for you, take the medicine. When I was a kid, it was the cod liver oil, take the cod liver oil, it's good for you. And then that was always, my mum always knew if I said, no, I'll go to school, she knew that I wasn't really that sick because I wasn't going to take the cod liver oil. So that intrinsic motivation's there, but there needs to be the triggers and how much is it the individual who's triggered that to come along to the training, and how much is that being encouraged. And then when we get those encouraged groups, it's us to then build the relationships with the individuals to find out, well, what is their motivation, what does help them get excited about things, and what's relevant to them, and so on. And then the other thing about building on for something that they know, I call it a context, so it might be a bit technical term, but I know myself, like when I have to learn something new and it just sounds like goobly-goop to me, like Michael's learning how to write Python code language for building, I don't know what, but I know it's something to do with technology. So when I have to learn something completely new and I don't have a context, like I don't have some way of recognizing how it fits in with my previous knowledge, then it can be really, really tricky. And I need to understand it in a way. So that's why it's often, if we can explain it in a way that relates to something that they already know. So I used to teach double entry accounting, like I say, for my sins. And it's quite a complex thing to teach people. It's very abstract. But I used to talk to them about building a house. Like I needed to teach them the accounting equation first, and that was the foundation of the house, right? So I gave them this context. Like this is going to be the foundation. If you can let me help you understand this quite complex thing, then you've at least got the foundation on your house. And we used to talk as we go through the whole program about building this house. We were building trial balances and balance sheets, but I gave them that context of, all right, these are the steps we have to take, and this is what it will look like, and this is in this very abstract way. All right, so most of us are feeling pretty good about being an adult learner, and again, there'll be times and days where we go, I'm feeling okay with all these things, and other days where you go, no, I just don't have the brain space or the brain power to do it. Anybody want to add anything else? So no worries, Jen, I can see that it's on this slide. That's fine. I'm happy for you guys to be on the slides and be active as much as you like, and things pop up where they might not, as long as they're on task and on topic. So that's all good, because as I said, I'll capture it on this slide now and it'll still be captured for what we've done. But I'll be quiet. Does anybody want to grab the mic, ask any questions, or give any other examples? Now we've got the list up.
We had an activity here where we're going to ask you to go into the chat and share one learning experience that personally highlighted for you, why a particular adult learning principle is important. So this could be something from, or should be something from your teaching learning background that really highlighted to you the importance of one of those programs. So give you a moment or two in the chat to get that up and have a think about that. I can give you an example while you're thinking. When I was did my HSC, it was back then, year 12, I studied economics and I loved it because the teacher, whose father had been a petrol station operator, channeled all the economic concepts, which were ethereal and quite big picture, into the experiences of his father at the petrol station. So the whole curriculum was basically based around explaining these concepts through the ups and downs of his father's business. And for me, that reinforced the importance of being something to be, relevant and something that we know, shaping off into the unknown kind of concepts. Then, of course, I went to uni and it was quite different. I dropped out, unfortunately. But
that sent you down on a different journey, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's gone.
What I will say is I'm a late learner,
Okay.
and I'm looking at all these principles up here on the screen, and for me, they were so relevant when I went back to school. I started in 2013, and I've done quite a number of certificates and diploma. I left school when I was in year 11 and I went to work like most people. And I finished my TAE in May when I went to do training. And I have to, the concept of what school used to be like, and now the difference between adult education, I find that because I'm an adult learner so recently, that my life experience of going back to school encourages some of my adults to know that, wow, I really have an empathy for what they're going through because I've done it. When Hazelwood closed, we had training money set aside, so I made the most of it. And here I am sitting doing training now. However, when I first went into training, there were people who didn't realise there were bridging courses and all sorts of things. So to say, hey, I've already walked this road not long before you. If I can do it, you can do it too. And that was something that was really worthwhile.
That's fabulous, Jen. It's all about finding that point of connection, isn't it, with your learners, and and sometimes we do forget having some distance on our own formal or semi-structured education, what that kind of experience might be like. So we have to find other ways of connecting. But you're right in there. Good on you.
Can I just add in quickly, Jen? I think like I've been around for a little while and I have been teaching and training for a long time. And when I get new trainers in and they kind of feel a bit nervous about being the new ones on the block, and I'm like, no, you guys are the best ones because you have fresh eyes, you see things, you'll ask questions about why we're doing stuff that makes some of us old people go, oh, well, why do we do that? Why is it that way? So, and I think it's also, like you said, good for learners because you're closer to their experience. And then just one more thing, this word empathy. And it's funny, I've had lots of professional discussions with colleagues around, what's the number one role of a teacher? And it always comes back to empathy. And I'm doing some study myself at the moment, and the actual academic said her philosophy of education is empathy. And I'd never heard that before. So I think it's actually something that we really probably should be teaching more explicitly when we're doing training courses for trainers. So Michael, do you want to share any more?
I just want to say, there's some good stuff in the chat. I was going to say, picking up from Jen's point there, that, sometimes I used to find that it was great to see students see you struggling, whether it be with the technology or with an idea or the photocopier not working or whatever it is, to see how you addressed challenges. And that's probably where Shemaine's really strong, I think, too, with her patience and whatever. That's to see you all at sea with something new or something that you can't think through or learn through, and how you deal with that as a kind of a role model, not only just from where you've come from, but from how you handle everyday situations, how you handle knowledge, you handle equipment, how you handle people. So it's really, I think, important. Okay, thanks, Alison. I might hand back to you.
So there's some good examples of of people's experiences. A lot of I need to be able to apply, I need to be able to use that for it to kind of give me the motivation, or for helping it make it stick when there's some good research around that's really important, that applying it to make it stick. So what we're going to do, so we're doing our numbers. So Michael, we might be able to do 3 groups of 3 in terms of a breakout room. So we're going to pop you into the breakout rooms in a moment. But before we do that, I'm just going to give you some instructions. So I'm going to give it to you in a couple of ways. So the first thing we're going to do is, how do you behave when you get into the breakout room? So I've put something in the chat. So I'm going to give you instructions about how to operate in the breakout room, because you until some of us get in, check on you or come around and see how you're going to be in there as individuals as you go. And so the first thing you want to do when you get in the chat, you only have to remember one thing, and that is open the chat. All right. So when you get in the breakout room, the only thing you have to remember is open the chat. What do you have to remember? Open the chat. Because if you open the chat, if I put it in now in the breakout room, if you open the chat in the breakout room, it will be there. All right. So open the chat. So remember to unmute your mic, and there will be these kind of broadcast messages as to when we're ready to wind up, or keeping you on track and so on. All right, so that's how to behave in the breakout room. Then what we want you to do is have this discussion around your learners, all right, in terms of your learners and these adult learning principles, because remembering they're principles, they're not laws, they're not set in stone. Not every individual, with humans being so unique as they are, will actually be able to function, or depending on their context or the time or their motivation, right? So when you get into the breakout room, well, actually now it might be best, in the chat, I've put a link to the slides that have those 6 principles on them. So if you need a reference point, you can have that. So ideally, when you click on the link, it goes to a web browser, and you don't have to do anything more. But if you'd like to download those slides, you can just click on the download button in the top right. So just make sure you've got access to that before you go into the room, and grab the chat. If you're sorry, grab the, I was too many things thinking at the same time. So any issues in terms of finding or downloading that copy of the slide, so you've got it as a reference point in the breakout rooms.
Okay, I might open the rooms now. So what you'll
All right,
get
no, sorry,
is,
Michael, one more thing. Sorry,
yeah.
That's them, just third instruction. I think I said 2, third instruction. All right, when they get into the breakout room, please just introduce yourself. And then how do these adult learning principles, which adult learning principles do your learners have, and which do they still need to develop? So sorry, Michael, that's me, I've finished.
Okay, I'll open the room now, and it's going to be groups of 3. We'll come around and see how you're going. But we won't kind of get involved too much, and we'll give you about 5 minutes, and you'll get a warning just before the room is about to close. That gives you about a minute to wind up your discussion, and now you'll get a message asking you to join the rooms, and you just have to accept that, and it will take you into those rooms. Here we go. Julie should get a prize. First one in. How you going there, Rob, on that phone?
He might be in twice, yeah. So he's in twice. So he's two. Is his 2 identities in the same room? So, no, he's not in. He's not in. Oh, I know. It might be his bandwidth.
He's got it now.
Excellent. I'll see you on. I'll see you on the other side.
All right. I'm going to put a timer on for this.
So, okay. All right. Yeah. So I'm Julie, and the students that I work with are Karen refugees. So the majority of them do come from a trauma-based background. So they do have a lot of health issues. So they're very motivated to come to the classes, which is wonderful. And we do keep it very much based on what their learning needs are, particularly because of the reason that they do have a lot of health issues. The younger students are very motivated to be able to speak English with their children who are at school or kinder, for example. So we might extend them further. There's 2 of us who teach in the room with an interpreter. So we're very fortunate in that regard that we can offer that to, or, you know, offer a different way of learning to all our students. So, and am I meant to have some questions somewhere? Mick, am I meant to be
No,
reading?
I think you're doing really well. You're talking about the learning principles that your learners already possess and done that kind of beautifully. And the other part of the question was what do they need to develop?
To develop, okay. The big thing that they keep telling us as teachers is they really want to do more conversational English. They're very keen to try to be able to do that independently. If they go somewhere in the town and they want to ask for something, they want to be able to ask that without someone helping them to do that. So we're very focused on doing real life experience activities with them, where we will go to different places within the town and give them the opportunity to do that. Yeah, so they're not goal or goal oriented necessarily, but that is, in a simple form, that's their goal. They don't want anything much bigger than that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to run off to another room. Thanks you. I'll leave you to keep chatting. Thanks, guys.
See you, Mick.
See you.
Bye. Bye, Mick.
We do actually have for work already, but we haven't delivered it yet. I'm gonna have to figure out how to do that by the end of the year. So yeah, but look, in terms of these adult learning principles, as I said, like I actually 2 different groups. One that has this group of adults with intellectual disabilities, and then another one which is small business owners that we're just trying to sort of upskill in various things. So I'd say the small business owners in many respects are very intrinsically motivated, you know, like they and they very much want the goal, like they don't have any time to waste. They just want to kind of grab the knowledge and go. That said, I think that I've sort of encouraged them to take more ownership over their learning and really drive that program and really identify what their learning needs are. And they've been really resistant to that. And really sort of wanting to just be like fed that information, which I always sort of find surprising because I expect that group to be really like gung-ho. I'm actually going to have to leave in 10 minutes just to get them set up on a thing, and then I will try to come back. And then, yeah, my group of adults with disabilities, it's funny because a lot of them are there because, you know, their parents have pushed them there. But now, like I've got a student who never participates in class, like not at all. Like she comes, she's always early. She, you know, leaves on time. She's there every time. She comes every single week. She never participates at all.
So how do you relate that to being intrinsically motivated then? Because I think that requires some extrinsic motivation with that adult learner. So maybe.
Well, it's interesting though, because
some good.
They're all still in there.
Yeah, no, it's
They haven't want
good.
to leave. It's-
No, it's good. The breakout rooms, I love it because it's their space,
Yeah.
and they often, especially in lockdown times, this is their time to actually have conversations with like-minded people that they might not get anywhere else. Those professional conversations, and also away from work. So you might have conversations with colleagues, but it's, always really, really work focused.
Yeah. Hey, welcome back.
We've got nearly everybody. Let's just check. The nice thing about the breakout rooms is technically you get herded back very quickly into the main room. And so, first of all, thank you so much for getting into the breakout rooms, getting tasky, and then starting those professional conversations and sharing information about what's happening in your area and linking it back to these adult learning principles, which we probably do, or we do. We do this, but we don't explicitly think about doing them in this particular way. So what I'd like to do again is to get your annotate. So the tool will hide every time. The annotate tool is only available when there's something shared on a screen. So obviously there wasn't anything shared on a screen in your breakout room. So you'll need to go back up the top and find that annotate tool, pop it out. And this time again, we're going to use the tick and the cross and so on. So a tick for those learners who in your learner group. So maybe think of a cohort if you've got a couple of cohorts of learners and a couple of groups of learners. So think of a group of learner, and then the ones that already have it, tick. If there's ones that you're like, they're on the way to having some of these, and if you think no, there's still a lot, let me just hide those. Sorry, I like to hide those, annotate. Just let us have a little stock take, a little quiet. I'll be quiet in a moment. A little stock take about your learners, which do you feel are certainly on the way, certainly there. Some are on the way, which is the question mark, and no, there's still a bit of a road to go. Maybe that's some of our role. This one here, where's my drawer? I know, I've been using, I can have a thing. Whoop. Right, okay. So I might get you talking in a moment, whomever this is here, but we've got the goal and problem orientated. And so there may be, you might want to split them out. Some of them may be goal orientated, like my daughter's totally goal orientated, right? She's the goner girl. The execution, not so some work to be done there. So we might want to split out, but she's pretty good at solving problems. So we might want to do that. So the small business learners, do you want to share a little bit about that? Who's that was?
That's me. I'm messing up your really nice nice slide here.
No, please. This is our slide, so please feel free to go for it. So sorry, tell us about your small business owner.
So we facilitate a small business group, and they are at varying stages of their small business journey. Some of them are quite experienced and some of them are brand new. And I would say they really don't have any patience for things that they do not see that there's going to be an immediate outcome. They're not here just to take a course because at some point in the future they want to do something with it. Like, they're doing it now, and they want that information now. So
to tell us a bit about their demographics, is there a common theme among them? Are they younger?
So they're all running. So demographically, I'd say they're actually really diverse, but what they have in common is they're all running their own small businesses and looking to extend that learning. So that fits really nicely in a pre-accredited space. But I would say they're really different from some of our other pre-accredited learners who are learning more sort of foundational skills. These guys, they want very specific knowledge, and they want it in really bite-sized pieces. They're not interested in the background and the grounding and the scaffolding. They don't want any of that.
Well, that's a really interesting point, because sometimes I talk about there's the need to have, the need to know, and the nice to know. All right. So we always make sure we give them the need to know, because if you're a small business owner, for which Michael and I are both of them, you need to know things, you need to know them quickly, because otherwise you're not going to be a small business owner for very long. And then there's the nice to have, the principles of the underpinning code and stuff, and we can put that over here. So we're not saying we don't give them access to it, but we just try to focus in on what's the really important things, what's the things that are going to get you through what you really need to do. And some of them, you might actually get them to do some of it themselves as well, because their needs may be so different that you can give them a framework, and then they need to apply that framework to their particular space. So Eric, can I just ask you, were you the cross here or the question mark, or were you the tick?
Neither, actually. Sorry, I just put the text.
Okay. What about our cross person here? Does anybody want to share that?
Yeah, sorry, that was me. Okay, so some of the students that I have are not goal orientated, they're not self-motivated, and they don't know how to solve problems. A lot of them come through job providers and just simply don't have the skills to be able to move. They see the problem as an obstacle, but don't know how to navigate past it. And that's where you impart the information, giving them skills to learn how to navigate around the issue.
What kind of strategies are you using for that?
So first of all, we identify, are there any learning disabilities? So are there any barriers to learning? Looking at each person learns in a different way. So identify that specific learning right prior to the program starting, so we can then know how to best help the student. We present them with the problem as it occurs, because they can't do something. We show them how to do it, and then how to navigate around it using some of their life skills. And it could be a problem solving skill, just saying, well, you can't just give up, let's find a solution. How are we going to solve that? So if it was left to you, what would they do? And some people say, oh, I just give up. And then others would say, oh no, I know there's a way around it, but I don't know how to find it. So it's just reinstating their confidence level, making them feel valued, and also understanding what it is that they need from you as a tutor to move past the issue.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, again, it's the human first. So build from the human out. So, you are a human, and you are valuable. And that's where, when we started planning this, Michael and I talked a lot about, in my experience as an educator, the one thing every learner I've ever had they come with experience, right? It might not be good experiences, might be the same experiences that all other learners have had, but they've had some experience. So how can we build on that, them as a human being and who they are and where they come from? Because sometimes I've had learners who've come from very traumatic, they've lived overseas and they've come from a very traumatic background. And so they've got to overcome, the basics of life, of understanding that, you are in a safe environment, and then build from there. What do they know from there? What about here, we've got just one more thing, and then we'll go on. There's another activity we want to do around this.
Sorry, Alison, I'm just going to pick up on one more thing that Charmaine said, which I reckon is really understated. Because he kind of alluded to the fact that being able to navigate the world of knowledge is a really important part of what we do, to be able to understand. This is really critical in sort of digital literacy, how you evaluate information, how you sift through it, how you make sense of it, and how you access and understand how it's structured and organised, so that you aren't, in the long run, dependent upon someone to interpret and unpick the world for you. And years ago, I remember teaching road rules here in the neighbourhood house, the knowledge which they need to get their learners. And in those days, we used to be able to get literacy students in to get their questions asked verbally. Now it's kind of computer. And so we built up over students going for their license. Then I conned my way into sitting in those. We had a bank of about 40 questions, 50 questions, which they used about 30. But what we realised was that all the images of the roundabouts and things in terms of resource design were shot from a car over the top, approaching intersection. But you don't drive that way. You drive looking at the intersection that you're going to encounter, looking straight ahead. So it's kind of a disconnect between the knowledge that they were trying to impart which was probably okay to people who had spatial learning, that didn't kind of gel with people who didn't have those particular skills. So, getting them to understand, navigate that kind of knowledge took a long time to kind of unlock. But once we had done that, it was kind of, people usually tend to get their license fairly quickly. Sorry, I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, no, but that's in terms of learning resources, designing learning resource, that's a really, really important part, isn't it? A really important point as to what it is from an engineer's technical perspective when they're designing something, to the reality of a day-by-day thing when you're trying to deal with information. So I was just going to ask quickly then, any more concerns around the internally motivated and self-directed? Anybody want to talk to that one? So just remember, there are the encouraged ones. So we that they are encouraged, or they're made, whatever you want to call it, forced to come. And then we've just talked about that learning. We actually need to explicitly build in learning how to learn techniques. So to be a self-directed learner, they might be motivated, but they might not have those skills. I just saw a little question mark down there. Does anybody want to talk to that one? They like to be respected for their roles and existing knowledge, that they're still a bit concerned about where their learners might be at or are on the way to that point.
That was me, and I put a question mark there because a lot of the learners that we work with through Diversitat are from the new arrivals, refugees, asylum seekers, and I think they come from very different cultural backgrounds, and they don't know that they should be respected for their roles and existing knowledge and skills. So they need to develop that. So that's why I put a little question mark in there.
So it's a really good point. We had a little conversation of the group yesterday about the different cultures that we work with.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, as a white Western person, I'm in a very individualistic motivated environment. So it's about me and then anybody who's in my kind of parameter, and then the rest of the world. Where a lot of cultures, a lot of Eastern cultures and other areas of the world, it's a community. It's about community, and there's clear pecking orders sometimes. So, you are, supposed to be quiet. You're supposed to be submissive, and that's what and it's perfectly well and good within your community. So, how do you bring them out of that? And so, in my experience, it's usually getting them to talk about their community, about them in their community, and the importance of their community can then help see. So they don't have a self-awareness of me as an individual and my own self-worth, but they do have a good understanding of what their role is within their community and how important their community is to them to build on.
Hey, Rob, what are the sort of differences you see in your cohort about their attitudes towards education, their prior experience with?
I don't think I have enough to share at the moment. I'm 3 months in.
Oh, wow.
And I don't actually have a teaching role. So and it's been very, very challenging during this period, because since I started, we've gone through 3 lockdowns as well. So yeah. A lot of that teaching has moved online. And so I have noted this from my experiences through enrolling students and my work with learners. They're very reserved, they're not outgoing, and they're very protective. But I couldn't really comment yet on the differences that I'm seeing. Ask me again in another 3 months.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you're kind of the gatekeeper towards bringing people into these programs. There's a lot that you can probably do to put people at ease in terms of what they're getting into as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think a lot of people come from a place of trauma as well. So a lot of the time they're protecting themselves, and so it might appear. Of course, everyone wants to be respected, and I think it's respecting that personal space for them and helping them develop and giving them the opportunity to work through that. And I really appreciate, Alison, I really appreciate how you expanded on that point and offered some really good advice there. That was really, really good, I thought.
So with the Foundation College, a lot of them, what they do is they get, it's about building a connectedness. Like how do I connect? And often in a face-to-face environment, it's a little bit easier because I can eyeball anybody, right? I've got a peripheral vision and I can see most people in the room and how they're operating. And, you know, at the break, they might bring certain food out that looks similar to mine, or I can overhear what they're saying and they're saying something similar to me. And so I can then gravitate to people who are similar to me. In an online environment, it's even harder because I've got a slither of, you know, you can only just see a few people. So it's, you know, I've seen the Foundation College people do wonderful things like building usually something like Padlet or somewhere that's a collective space, and they put photos of their food, right? Put your food, and so, you know, food is a common thing. We all eat, and most of us are quite passionate about our food, and so we start to build that connectedness, and again, of something of our own experience, yeah. So hopefully there's some things there, but I'm going to move on because I can see time ticks away, and I'm going to say it once because I said it once yesterday. I'm usually the time Nazi, so I'm just going to be a little bit of a time Nazi right now. But Michael, do you want to lead this conversation?
Yeah, we've had a bit of a chat about learning principles and what you have kind of told us about what you think your learners have and what they don't in terms of those learning principles. So I'm going to ask you how you might address some of those gaps of getting them moving kind of fully toward being an adult learner that across all those sort of principles. So, you know, it might be in terms of the things that you have to facilitate, or some of the examples we've had already around how you listen and shape and negotiate curriculum with your learners. So it might be in the choices of the particular resources that you select, or it might be about what means you put in place to determine how your learners are moving forward and understanding and applying what it is that you're working on together. So yeah, what would help you address that gap with your learners is the subject of this brainstorm, and we're asking you to type these up on the screen there using the annotations tool, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion about what you've got. Invite some of you to chat about those. We should have valuable prizes. In fact, last year in the height of the pandemic, this item here was probably worth about $60-70 on eBay. So we could probably, you know, give you a bit of that down to the pipe. But already we've got a couple up here. We can't tell who's posted what, so you can kind of type whatever you like. That's why we ask you to address who's in there. We're getting some great stuff coming up. Yeah. Identifying learners' needs, help them see the final goal. I mean, those needs thing can take a long time as things unfold to you. Being adaptive with the content, yeah, something not working, changing, or even if your explanation is not working as well, it's kicking on that and building on existing knowledge and skills. Yeah, picking up on even sharing those skills that learners might have and getting them to lead sessions sometimes used to work as well. Being flexible is very important. I think that relates a little bit to adaptability and to see when things are not working, not take it personally, but to have that creativity to be able to change on the fly to get things working, or asking students where the issues are going to be. And a cooking class with Carl women, yeah, that's fantastic. Ask them to share their traditional recipes and show the group how to prepare the dish. That's a great example. Encouraging students to actively engage in the learning environment. Yeah, so creating, welcoming, comfortable class climate. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That road rules class I mentioned before. when the student had actually got their learner's permit, we asked them to come back and teach the group and give them a certificate and all that. And they had a different mindset. They had a total, I've moved on from this. They often used to come back to get their Ps, but it was a really kind of nice line in the sand, because they didn't really get much opportunity to participate in the kinds of celebrations of achievement, no matter how minor, that we kind of take for granted. So creating those things like the recipes and cooking in front of that, it really kind of way of saying, I can do this and I've reached a milestone, even if it's just sharing something as well. Active listening and patience, and always putting the person first. Yeah, that's a really interesting one, and almost something we have to teach ourselves, to just shut up and let kind of people speak to the point, I guess, where they're not maybe repeating themselves, or it becomes kind of you're a bit of a captive audience, but being able to feedback that you've heard and to maybe extend the understanding through some open questions to kind of clarify if it is what they've got and they understand. Really important.
Especially with those with the second language, you need to be able to be sure that you've understood exactly what they were trying to say. And you haven't, sometimes it doesn't come out quite right. So you've got to encourage them a bit more. And when you're patient with them, they might be able to expand a little more, so that you're sure that they're conveying what they want to convey.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to go beyond words to that, don't you? You maybe have to draw, or allow them to use their word, and you try and nut it out, or look for images, whatever you can kind of do. Or we had an example yesterday where one of the participants coordinated a community horticulture pre-accredited training program, and she managed to find a Mandarin teacher, which was the cohort, and that really deepened the level of engagement. But that's not something we all have. So what do you recommend there?
Just be patient. Now, sometimes they've got a dictionary, or they'll look it up on their phone or whatever, and you go over and you can have a look, because they've all got ways of getting around their language problems too a bit. They don't just come without a dictionary. Most people who come to a class are phone savvy too, that if you can get them to go on Translate, if they haven't got the word, they can go on so that you've got the right word for them. And eventually they know that then they can participate even by that. Yeah, that's fine if that's how you can engage. All these little bits can help them gain confidence, so that when they come back, they know it's a safe space. I also found that when mine went online, mine didn't have to worry about finding childcare or all the other things. And they absolutely blossomed because they were in a safe space. Hubby was happy that they were still attending class in a safe space from home. So there's all these other little cultural features that they can, that helps them encourage too.
Yeah, we had some similar reports too there, Jen, and in terms of being able to see into one another's houses and being a great leveler between students and teachers, and that you're on kind of, even though you're in Zoom, you're in neutral ground.
Is the hijab the one that's on only on their head? The scarf? Is that?
Yes, it is.
Is that right? I had one who would always come to class totally covered up. And when she was online with our class of ladies, she would not even have the scarf on. She was so confident with us that we were in her home, just as a guest. It was really remarkable.
That's a fantastic example of that welcoming and comfortable class climate.
Yes, yes.
But if we build on, like they're building on their existing, let's say their existing life skills or whatever, I think acknowledging that the courage they have to, first of all, come to another country, if they've got young children, and then start to learn another language. Like, I hold those people in awe, because there's huge risks, and it takes a lot of confidence, or it takes a lot of courage to do that. And so, yeah, I think it's that mutual respect, isn't it, that we can show
definitely
people. So, Michael, anything more in here? Sorry, Jen, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
I'm just going to ask the person who said flexibility as a teacher to maybe speak to that in terms of the gap.
So that was me, and I think just understanding and covering some of the points that both Jen and Jane as well made previously, with understanding each learner has a different need, looking at what it is as a learner they need from you. You might have a devised program or a set program, but understanding that you need to be flexible in your teaching method so that they can absorb the information and put it into practice. So although you might have a set program, it's understanding you need to be flexible to give them what it is that they need, and help gain their confidence along the way and their trust.
So you checking each student kind of informally to decide are they're understanding it and they're kind of applying it, and what do you look for?
So I look for, just in general conversation, I find out, do they have any, as far as the barriers, learning barriers go, what those barriers are, identifying what it is from the course in particular that they are interested in learning. That helps me look at the learner and seeing what they want as an outcome and incorporating that into the class. I also look at, are they obtaining this qualification or these skills to be able to, for this in their working environment? Are they looking, what it is that motivates them? If I can find out what motivates them, then I can deliver the course in a way that will keep them constantly interested. But I have to be flexible.
Yeah, because I guess your perceptions of that shutter and change as things happen, unexpected behaviour or outcomes and things too.
Yes.
You might, sorry, Charmaine, it may be the one place that they integrate into Australian society by coming to class too. And if you're showing them respect, it might be the one place within their whole scheme that they are equal to everybody else too.
Exactly, Jen. So we have multicultural students. We have young people who have left school early, who can't, under normal circumstances, attend school every day because they do have barriers. And, it's looking at how can we get those students in, we can gain their trust, their respect, make them feel valued, and then impart the information so that we can help them achieve their outcomes. If you can, as an end goal, if you achieve that, they will keep coming back.
Yes.
Fantastic stories.
Absolutely. When lockdown, my course finished with my multicultural ladies, I would have a catch up online for them just once a week, because they so miss the outside contact. So we were sort of doing it as a mental health check-in for them as well. And they so appreciated it, that it was an extension. They still got together as their little group, and we were able to have a conversation about, what was happening. But for their own ongoing mental health, And I noticed even in the time that they hadn't come in, how much their English had dropped off. You know, it was much more stilting. So the gains that we'd made in class by going online for these little catch-ups helped maintain their English and their participation in society, and contributed to their mental health too.
Yeah.
And they never missed. They never missed.
Yeah, a friend of mine teaches still in Learn Local. He's got a WhatsApp group, and he said it kind of goes off at all hours of the night. There's people catching up with one another and relating to each other, and just generally trying to deal with the isolation and keeping the learning. Thank you very much for those examples. So, you know, like the whole kind of basis of this program is to introduce people to the kind of idea of instructional design, and we've done that through the lens of the adult learning principles. But in the following sessions, which some of you might have joined up, we go into a little bit more detail, and we start to design resources for your particular cohort using some of these principles and other things around instructional design. So we've got an example of what we think is not a bad resource, a good resource here. And we're going to ask you to have a look at this and think about those learning principles, and give us some feedback on what you think the features of this are that either make them a good practice example or not, according to your.
Can I be really cheeky and jump in?
You certainly can.
We don't call courgettes, we call them zucchinis.
Ah, okay.
So
That's
yeah,
a
sorry.
good point.
Yeah, I probably didn't pick up on the subtlety. So yeah, I've pulled it off the net, Jen. I didn't go for a regional thing, but we're going a bit French today.
That's good feedback, Dave. So yeah, you have to do a bit of work explaining what they are, wouldn't you?
Yes, and they make, in their country, they may be courgettes, but over here we don't call them courgettes.
Yeah, okay.
That's part of our
Thank you.
multiculturalism.
Yes. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's a good place to start. So yeah, if you through that's like I guess a lot of what we are able to access becomes American, doesn't it? So being able to kind of view that through that lens.
I guess one comment I would make in terms of applying an adult learning principle is I'd probably remove the ingredients list as a first step.
Yep.
And I'm not sure what that would align to, but I guess it would call on their existing experiences and knowledge. So I wouldn't give them the answer straight up. I would take that out and say, you know, what can you populate first, and then give it to them as needed.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Someone yesterday said that they would cook the cake first, then do this exercise, which is an interesting. To give them experience and then reflect on that knowledge.
Then you get a cake. That's a great idea. So you use the ingredients first. That's a great point.
Anybody else?
I'm the same. I love cooking, so I'd probably love to do a cooking activity with this as well. And I'd also bring in measuring cups and measuring spoons, so that the students can actually physically see, well, how much is half a cup.
Yeah, so you'd make this a little more hands-on by being able to, understand what these measures are.
Yeah.
And also to kind of see the differences between quantities and ingredients and how they might not necessarily be equal. 250 grams of milk is quite a bit different from 250 grams of sugar. Anything else? Oh, we'll try another one. This is just it's just a weather forecast that was used as a resource. What's your response to this one? apart from the perception that Ballarat is very cold at this time of year.
What are the questions that you're wanting them to answer?
All right, so you would need to generate.
That's right, some questions.
Yeah, and what kind
For
of questions?
example,
yep.
What is the coldest day of the week? Or what are the coldest days of the week?
Would they necessarily, would you do those verbally?
You could do it verbally, or it depends whether it's going to be a reading and a listening exercise, or whether it's a writing exercise. So depending on what you're doing, what kind of activity you're doing, you could have the questions written and they populate the answers in there, put their answers in, or you could have it as a reading activity and a listening activity where you ask the questions verbally and maybe write the responses on the board.
Yep.
You have that type of engagement.
Yes.
So it's the communication, practicing their listening and their speaking. So it depends what you're wanting to achieve, I think.
Yeah. What about in terms of the real life component? Say you're thinking of planning an event on the Sunday, picnic, for example.
I think with this resource, there's a diversity in the temperature, but there's not actually diversity in the pictures. So it's all rain, which is limiting to them kinds of questions because it's
yeah.
So it'd be different if like Wednesday was sun, one day was foggy. There'd be a lot more vocab that you could look at.
Exactly. I'm sorry, that's spelled out last week, but I take your point.
And 1 degree on the Thursday would be really cold, that it would be frosty.
Yes.
Some extra additional photos to give them a pictorial clues.
Yeah, different icons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it lacks a bit of variety in the yeah.
So I'm thinking of having images of umbrellas and the hats and scarves and gloves, and asking them to plan what they would wear for the day.
Oh, that's a good one.
And on a personal note, I came from the UK when I was 16, and it took me many, many years to work out the spring weather in Melbourne. So I think
have you worked it out, Jane, after all these
well,
years?
To be quite honest,
tell everybody else.
I don't think I have. But that would be a good one for, I think, a good activity for people who have newly arrived, to help them negotiate the weather.
Yeah, no matter what
you
Of course, you could always bring it in, what sort of temperatures would they have been having at home, what sort of conditions.
This time of year,
yeah, as a talking point.
And I guess if they had the app, they could potentially look that up too.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Well, thanks for that. This is a screen grab from an app, and yesterday a couple of people suggested that they would go straight to the app and engage with that. But we better move on because we've just about hit time here. And just thanks for that. In fact, thanks for all your participation today. It's been really fantastic to be able to hear your experiences, and hopefully some of you are continuing on with us. And so this is just a bit of a list. I won't go through these to consider when selecting resources in terms of many of you. In fact, you've mentioned most of these. Resources also can be pre-existing. I really like that idea of co-design and negotiating, which would put the onus back on the students to contribute some of those things with some assistance. And then how we might evaluate those resources. How do they access it? Do we need to provide it? Is it available online? Has it got that relevancy, appropriateness? Does it allow itself in some way for learners to work together to negotiate the understanding, or even to apply that knowledge through some open questions? And as we saw with the weather app, what kind of questions could you make with that resource? Most resources don't come with questions if we're using real world things. So how do we then adapt and build on those to create those activities? And how does the resource contribute to being able to understand what the learner's learning journey has been towards acquiring new knowledge and applying it? Similar to what Jen was saying around hearing people come into Zoom and losing a little of their English over time. It's kind of good, kind of a yardstick. So these are the things we investigate in a little bit more depth in the next programs. And there's still opportunities for you if you haven't been part of that to participate in there. So just to bleed into that, I'm going to ask you quickly on the brainstorm, what in a perfect world, what would be the learning resource you would really like to develop for your cohort? Give me a moment or two on that to brainstorm that. Oh, and now we're talking. That's a really good one. One time in our itinerant Life as a Neighbourhood House, we were part next to a gymnasium and we used to play basketball at lunchtime. And sometimes the basketball matches lasted for 3 hours. We didn't actually go back to work. But I think the learning in that was probably much better, and people actually got quite fit. And quite a few people took up basketball, which was probably the main outcome of the program, to be honest. But it was great.
Mick, I do hand washing, and I do my hand washing to the Wiggles. And I had young mothers in my class, and the littlies at home, when we went online, would join us to do the Wiggles song for the hand washing. So it was very inclusive. And one poor, a lot of grandparents in Cambodia got a demonstration of the Wiggles, a hand washing song at about 4 a.m. one morning, when the little fella decided that him and mum would show grandma and grandpa their hand washing routine to the Wiggles. He was so excited that mum could now do a song with the Wiggles.
That's fantastic. And then I guess you could do a pathway on to hospitality skills when you did the hot potato.
Yes, well, I didn't do hot potato, but it was really relevant to infection control and hand washing, which was what I was teaching them as well. So, yeah.
Thanks, Jim. That's a great list. Fantastic list. That's a really good kind of set of benchmarks for considering what can go towards. I really like that active nature and fun, self-directed. Yeah. And open-ended activities can be extended. Yeah, to being flexible to be able to kind of continue those. All right, thank you. Well, we've got one more brainstorm to do, and that is we're going to ask you to share one thing, one takeaway that you from the whole group that you'll investigate through being part of today's session, and you can put that on the board or in the chat, whichever's easy for you. One thing you'll take away.
So maybe if you use the chat, because I'm going to go run through a couple of the other slides while people are, and just to wrap up for today's session. So I'll just let you read what the questions, and then I'll move in through. Well, I can just talk to it actually. So one of them is around the certificate of participation. So we are working in collaboration with VELG Training. So VELG Training are the people who registered you. And so Michael and I will make sure they know you were here today. And so you'll get your certificate of participation. I would like to just quickly go to these slides and just remind you that we do have these programs running where we've done going to start the pre-activities this week, but it doesn't matter, they don't have to be done this week, but we've certainly got the first webinars happening next Wednesday around the designing and developing designing and developing literacy and numeracy learning resources. And so they're specifically about how to effectively design learning and literacy and numeracy. I need to get my literacy organised today. Literacy and numeracy learning resources. And one starting next Thursday for a 3-week program, specifically designing employment skills or employability type skills as well. So so what we might do is say thank you so much for everybody attending today. We've got our contact details. We'll follow up with an email that has the slides and the recording in it, so you've got those as resources, and then you'll have our contact details as well. If you have to go, because we're well and truly over the time we said that we'd be here, please, thank you so much. I'm assuming Virg will also ask you for some feedback, so there'll probably be some sort of feedback link, so it'd be great if you could actually give us some feedback so we can improve what we're doing. Please feel free to hang about if you've got any more questions or discussions you'd like to have, but if you need to leave, just down the bottom right hand corner you should be able to find the little leave button and go out of there. But let's just have a quick look. So if you are still here, so the thing about students being important, I mean, they're really the core of everything we do. They can sometimes be hard work, and sometimes we need to remind ourselves or have something in front of mind that says, you know, that they are the reason why we are doing what we're doing. And it's when you get those wins, whether they're big or small, when you see the outcomes or the expressions on their face or those aha moments, you know, you're in the job and why you enjoy it so much. So Michael, I might hand it back to you if there's anything in the chat I might have missed. Otherwise, any questions or comments anybody wants to raise?
Did anyone see on the news, just slightly for the cold communities, it was on the news this morning that some of the medical bulletins that they've been putting out to the western suburbs and with health messages on is over 2 months old. Government have not bothered to update it. Last time they had a glitch with